sir. Let's begin the day with a quote. I am not a wise man, I am only a curious child. The introduction of GST marked a transformative shift in the tax regime, consolidating numerous indirect taxes. However, the new and evolving law gave rise to many challenges in interpretation of law, which resulted in a number of litigation matters. Major litigation aspects surround the claim of input tax credits, rates at which the goods or services shall be taxed, and many more. What can we as professionals do to handle such legal and practical nuances of litigations under GST? Well, this session is all about the same. Gracing the days are CA Prakash Shah, past chairperson of Anand branch of WIRC of the ICAI as the session chairperson, faculty advocate Shailesh, Sheth, and CA Jagrut Shah, treasurer of Anand branch of WIRC of ICAI. I request CA Prakash Shah to deliver his opening remarks.
Welcome to dignitaries on the dais, our CCM Purushottam Bhai, RCM Vikas Bhai, and our galaxy of past chairmen, all the dignitaries and delegates present here. I welcome in the first session of today's seminar. Presently, friends, we are facing normally section 73 and 74 notices and other litigations in the GST in our day-to-day practice. We are also receiving mechanically issued without application of mind notices under GST and in other area of other than section 73 and 74. Presently also GST appellate tribunal is in the formation stage. So we also need to go other than mechanism available in the Act, other legal recourse, and considering vast experience of our today's faculty, Advocate Shailesh Bhai, he must be. I am confident that after this session we must have more input and tools while facing a litigation matter in this area of GST. With this, I welcome all the delegates once again. Friends, I must congratulate a team of both Anand branch and Vadodara for organizing such a nice and successful seminar and honoring me to host, honoring me as a session chairman. Thank you. And floor is open for our faculty. Friends, after his presentation, session will be open for question and answer. So if anybody will free want to question answer our session chair, our faculty, they can have a liberty at after his session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With over 35 years of expertise in indirect tax laws, including central excise, service tax, customs, and GST, our faculty has represented diverse sectors across manufacturing, service, and distribution. He is a sought-after speaker, having delivered over 140 lectures on GST nationwide since April 2017 and authored more than 110 articles on the subject. Recognized for his contributions, he has received prestigious awards such as the Award of Appreciation from Pen and Stationery Association of India in 2019 and 2023, and the Special Jury Award at TIOL National Taxation Awards 2021 under the category of Fiscal Journalist and Columnist. Additionally, he was featured in the 51 Gauravavanta Gujarati list by Chitrarekha magazine in 2022, highlighting his significant contributions to the field of taxation. With these words, let's welcome faculty for this technical session, Advocate Shailesh. I now request CA Prakash Shah to welcome our speaker with a Rudraksh tree. Thank you, sir. I now request past chairperson of Anand branch, CA Kiran Patel sir, to felicitate our speaker with a memento. We also acknowledge the presence of CA Vikas Jain sir, Regional Council member. I request CA Hiral Prajapati to felicitate him with a memento. Before we proceed with the session, there are some important updates for all our members. We request CA Purushottam Khandelwal sir to share the same with us.
Good morning, respected dignitaries on the dais, off the dais. It's an immense pleasure to be here in this morning. What is a very important announcement in the last visit I with Aniket Talati, President from our own Gujarat. And that times the request from the managing committee members of the Anand branch and all the past chairmen that they want their own building at Anand. So there was a limitation of 500 members, so we can't do that process. But after the discussion and deliberation at council, and in the 75th year of the inception, we have decided to construct a building with 300 to 500. So we fall in this category, and I'm extremely happy that we will next time we will do the best branch building of the Anand branch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I now request Advocate Shailesh Sheth sir to take charge of the session.
Is it visible? Last row. Otherwise, some of you can come in the front also. Good morning, friends. All the dear and respected members of the various committees of the branches, from the council, senior members, and my extremely enthusiastic and youthful friends sitting over here. Legal and practical nuances of litigation under GST. This entire topic can be summed up in this one of my favorite quotes by Ambrose Bierce. Litigation is a machine in which you go into as a pig and come out as a sausage. And here you means taxpayer, obviously. We professionals are only enjoying the taste of the sausage. Hugh McLennan says, man is a thinking animal, a talking animal, a tool-making animal, a political animal, a building animal, a fantasizing animal, but in the twilight of civilization, he is chiefly a tax-paying animal. So we are all destined to be tax-paying animal till we breathe our last. And it has been rightly said that life is change. Change is the only constant in the life. But then there are two constants also in the life which never change, and they are death and taxes. So they remain with you. They are constants. So till you breathe our last, till we breathe, tax remains with us. And I am sure there are quite a few on this planet who would be preferring death to the taxes, because you die only once. Death doesn't get worse day by the day like taxes. So it's better to die once rather than to be, suffer the torture of the ever-changing taxation regime. Yesterday I was listening to Kapilji, and I just started wondering, income tax is not my subject, but maybe in the evening I'm going to torture you with income tax also. But I just started thinking about, and suddenly that thought struck me. Section 139 is for the return filing, correct? And section 148 for the scrutiny. Coincidentally, or by design, a very devilish sense of humor, you can say, of the draftman, the total of both these sections comes to 13. 139 also comes to 13, and 148 also comes to 13. So you have no respite from these two sections ever. Okay. You are stuck up with them. Friends, GST, I'll try to touch upon certain legal and practical aspects of litigation, covering summons, scrutiny of returns, audit, show cause notice, adjudication and appeals. Certain salient aspects with certain practical insight, whatever I have actually acquired in last 30 years, I try to share with you. But before that, let me clear certain fundamental misconceptions which I have been observing ever since GST has been introduced in this country on July 17. The first and foremost is, please take out from your mind that GST is a law different than erstwhile laws of excise, service tax, VAT. Please, this is the fundamental misconception by which we suffer. It is not a law which has been created and drafted by an alien coming from Uranus or Mars or Saturn. The basic concepts of GST laws remain almost the same as they were in excise and service tax and to VAT. So don't look at this law as if you are dealing with something new. The basic concepts remain the same. Two avowed objectives of the GST regime are avoidance of the cascading effect, mitigation of cascading effect of tax on tax, which is achieved through the input tax credit mechanism. And another fundamental character of GST, like any other indirect tax, is that GST, all indirect taxes are consumption taxes. And GST or VAT is a destination-based consumption tax. Now, this character has to be kept in mind of GST because it has a lot of bearing on how the entire certain important provisions of the GST laws are understood, to be interpreted and to be implemented. When we say destination-based consumption tax, it means the taxability or taxable event arises where the consumption takes place. And therefore, exports are always relieved of the tax burden because consumption takes place outside India, and imports are always subjected to the reverse charge because the import consumption takes place in India. Now, when we look at this, immediately the place of supply rules of Rule 12, 13 and 14 of the IGST rules come into play. Okay, where is the place of supply? If we claim a transaction to be an export of supply or an import of supply, all these questions will arise because the export per se, world over, it's an accepted norm that exporters should not be forced to export the domestic taxes. They should be relieved of the taxes. And that is sought to be achieved by zero rating the export under section 16 of the IGST Act. The supplies to SEZ unit or SEZ developer, or exports without payment of tax, or exports under the export of goods, this is how it is sought to be achieved. Exports on payment, Rule 96, export on payment of tax, exports under what? Rule 89 of the CGST rules. So destination-based consumption tax. And secondly, they are all consumption taxes. What do you mean by consumption taxes? The ultimate burden of indirect tax falls on the consumer or is expected to fall on the consumer. Having said that, it does not mean that the consumer or customer is compelled to bear the burden. So if the supplier businessman fails to collect the taxes from the consumer, still he remains liable for the payment of tax to the government. He cannot say that this is a consumption tax and therefore consumer must pay even if I might not have collected or missed to collect it from on my past transactions. But you are a consumer, this is a consumption tax, therefore you have to pay it. There is no mechanism, there is no law, and there cannot be any law whereby a businessman who has missed to collect the taxes from the consumer or his customer will be able to collect it later on from the law. Does not help. Commercial arrangement is a different matter. So you have got to be very, very careful while drafting and finalizing any commercial agreement for your client. This part of the, many have actually paid too much of attention to this. The drafting of commercial agreements from all, not only from GST perspective, from all perspective, labor laws perspective, income tax perspective, other regulatory regime perspective, they are all important, but GST should take the forefront also. So when any commercial agreement, when any understanding is sought to be achieved through a written agreement between the two parties, one has to be extra careful so that there is no misgivings or there is absolutely no gaps as far as the tax burden is concerned. Who is going to bear the tax burden? So these are consumption taxes. So what is the role of the businesses? If it is a consumption taxes, businesses are expected to act only as a pass-through. He collects the taxes, deposits it with the government. So he is only acting as a pass-through. And however, as I said, though he is expected, he is working for the government only. All businesses are working on the government, and as somebody has very slightly and smartly said, everybody is on the, working for the government, either on their payroll or on their tax roll. So what we say about Sarkari Babu, see, the Jawai is the son-in-law of the government, they are on their payroll, and we are on their tax roll. We pay the taxes, right, and they are on their payroll. So, but everybody is working for the government. Now, however, though he is expected to act as a pass-through, whether it is a B2C transaction or whether it is a B2B transaction, the liability of the supplier businessman remains under the law. The other important, these are the fundamental character of the GST as an indirect tax. This is subject by itself. One of the outstanding feature of the GST, not much has been deliberated upon it, is the neutrality of the tax. Neutrality is a fascinating feature of the GST or VAT, but it's a subject by itself which can take hours and hours. The other aspect is, coming back to the laws, GST law, CGST Act, or the rules made thereunder, certain other a few other misgivings or misconceptions are. I'll start with first, there is no assessment under GST. As we commonly understand, when you file the income tax return, you now receive the intimation your return has been accepted under 143 if I am not mistaken, correct? When earlier we used to file the VAT returns, there has to be assessment of the VAT returns, right? Local sale tax and the CST, and assessment orders were passed. Pre-2000 in our excise, there were RT12 returns, we used to file RT12 returns, those returns were assessed, these assessment orders were passed on the RT12 monthly return, and the orders were actually available orders. Since then we have come down, we have come a long way, it is all self-assessment. Self-assessment regime was continued in service tax, it is continued under GST, so there is no assessment per se by the officer of the GSTR1 and GSTR3B returns which you are filing on behalf of your clients. You are filing it online. The Either the scrutiny takes place, you may receive some intimation. It is not necessary that post scrutiny under section 61 there will always be some sort of intimation, or you will never know also. Client will never know, taxpayer, whether his returns have been accepted or not accepted. If there are any discrepancies, the process under section 61 may be initiated by the proper officer. But if that process is not initiated, then it is an implied confirmation that nothing is found to be objectionable with the returns you are filing, but one will never get an assessment order. And I have been observing this particular policy in the thinking right from service tax days. Unfortunately, it also led to a lot of wrong practice. I have seen professionals, I am very sorry and disturbed to say this, when the ST3 returns were being filed under service tax, those returns were getting acknowledged. It was not online, physical returns when they were being filed initially. Then those acknowledgement was actually touted, it was projected by the professional to his client, to their clients, saying that, look here, I have wrote this this return and I have got your assessment done. So there is no assessment under GST. There was never under excise and service tax. The second is, this may come as a shocker to you, but there is no audit by independent professionals under GST. Section 35 and section 44. 44 you are filing GSTR 9 and GSTR 9C. 9 is an annual return, 9C is a reconciliation statement. What do we file with the reconciliation statement? Audited balance sheet for the financial year, or based on that a reconciliation statement is not an audit report. It is merely a reconciliation. It is, you cannot even equate it by any stage of imagination with 3CD. It's not a tax audit report. We don't have any guidelines for the GST audit by the professionals. There is no set mechanism. There is no set format also, unlike under income tax, where you undertake the tax audits. It's a comprehensive exercise. Tax audit is a mind-boggling exercise. I can imagine. We don't have. The policy was the title of section 35, audit by the, and that actually led to a lot of, again, misconception and malpractice also. Again, I am sorry to say. A reconciliation is reconciliation. It may be little bit exhaustive than always, but for decades I have been witnessing that every single taxpayer worth his name will be doing this type of reconciliation at the end of the period. That whether what he is declaring in service tax or excise is matching with his return under VAT or not, and with the final balance sheet under income tax or not. That if this reconciliation is not done by the taxpayer himself, it will be done by the, it will be insisted upon by the audit or by the department over a period of time. But this reconciliation is not an audit. The problem is, if I tell my client that I am doing your reconciliation, client may not be willing to pay me 25,000, but if I tell him that I am doing your audit, he would gladly pay me 50,000 and 1 lakh rupees. When we talk about indirect tax like GST, is a fascinating piece of legislation, and it demands lot many efforts and insight from the professional dealing with the subject, practicing in the subject. When we do the reconciliation, do we do the transaction analysis? Do we go into the each and every transaction? Do we go into classification, whether it has been correctly determined or not? Do we go into valuation, whether value has been correctly determined or not? Has there been any additional consideration in the form of taxes, fees or penalties? Section 15(2). Exemption notification, 11 by 2017 service, 1 by 2017 goods, whether the right has been correctly applied or not, whether the condition attached to the exemption entry has been fulfilled or not. Are we really going into that as a part of our filing of the reconciliation in the annual return in GSTR 9C? And why this is important? The last feature, there are not many things. This is again, this illumination probably is, there are certain fundamental aspects on which on that only one session can be held. But I'll just end with the last part of this, and that is, all indirect taxes are transaction-based taxes, unlike income tax. In income tax, throughout the year you do your business, gross turnover, gross sales, gross purchase, net profit, you arrive at a net taxable income and pay the taxes on it. But indirect tax, be it excise, service tax, VAT, for that matter customs and even GST, they are transaction taxes, transaction-based taxes. Every single transaction creates rights in your favor and liabilities against you. Every single transaction. And therefore, if a taxpayer has been doing actually doing one transaction 100 times over correctly, but if he falters, if he commits a mistake on 101st time, the liability will entail. He cannot say that I have done this 100 times correctly, अब तो मुझे छोड़ दो, एक बार गलती हो गई तो क्या हो गया? No. Every single transaction is important. There is no complacency, there is no place for complacency here. When we talk about this transaction-based tax character of the GST is probably lost on many. How this becomes important over as we proceed, I will explain to them in the context of the litigation. So these are certain basic concepts which we need to keep it in mind. With this, let me start with the litigation part. Friends, just like excise or service tax, the chief causes of or the genesis of any litigation under GST laws also lies in three factors. The one is inquiry, the second is audit, and third is investigation. Inquiry coupled with scrutiny. So let me start the scrutiny under section 61, audit under section 65, and investigation under section 67. These three remains the chief sources for the future litigation under GST. Nothing new. The only added feature under GST is the scrutiny of returns under section 61. I'll come to that. That's the only, because it was absent under excise and service tax. There was no scrutiny of returns under excise and service tax. It has come under GST as a legacy of the VAT. The section 70 deals with summons, and then comes Rule 142(1)A for DRC 01A, pre-notice intimation. Then your show cause notice with DRC 01, section 73 read with Rule 142, sub-rule 1, sub-rule A, clause A, and then section 74. Then comes adjudication, then appeal section 107, tribunal 112, and High Court, and then Supreme Court. This is how the complete hierarchy of the litigation process is, right from the first assessment order or any ASMT 10 till Supreme Court. So let us first start with the summons. The first and foremost, summons provision under section 70 are no different than section 14 of Central Excise Act, made applicable to service tax by section 83 of the Finance Act, nor from section 108 of the Customs Act. Nothing new about summons as far as the GST is concerned. So don't get panicked by summons. Summons is merely an intimation issued by a proper officer in the context of GST laws. It is an intimation or an instrument which is issued by a proper officer or an authority calling upon the party on whom it is served to present before him to tender evidence or to produce documents. Summons is nothing, it is merely an intimation. It's a different thing that it is used as a tool of intimidation. But otherwise it is merely an intimation. So when an officer tells you or your client कि ठीक है मैं अभी आपको summons issue करता हूँ, so that summons is not something like coming from the criminal side or from the police. Don't get panic about summons. It is merely an intimation to calling you for tendering some evidence or for document, and is no different from the section 14 or section by the language also. So one should never allow one to be panic or get frightened or get threatened by the threat of the summons which might be actually told out by the officer. Never. You should not ignore summons, but one should never get into the panic mode because of the summons. There is a FAQ, very detailed FAQ issued by the CBIC on the summons part. It is available on the CBIC website. I will not go into that. The first is, can summons be issued to any person? This question is for the reason that can the professionals advising the client in the GST matter, on the GST matters, or even filing the returns, can he be summoned also? The word uses any person. The word any person is of a wide import, as has been observed by Madras High Court in the Vithalnathan case. Recently, Supreme Court has also interpreted the word any, which is of a very wide import. However, having said that, unless and until the role of the party or the nexus of the person, be it professional or otherwise, unless and until the nexus or the involvement or the rare prima facie of the offence suspected to have been committed by the taxpayer is available, some evidence is available, as a matter of fact, as a matter of rule, a professional handling the work of his client cannot be summoned. The powers are there, but it cannot be applied blindly. Here, the caution which I would like to advance is, as professionals, as chartered accountants, one should really, as far as possible, avoid having the password and ID of their clients. Most of you might be also, some of you might be, getting the data from the client and filing the returns themselves. It may not be a healthy practice. Let the data be scrutinized by you. 10 days are available, 10 to 11 days are available for GSTR1, another 10 days for GSTR3B. A possible practical, I don't get into technicalities more. As far as all this technology and technical, I'm not ashamed of SME. I belong to the Neanderthal age. So I don't get into too much of this. But my suggestion would be that if you want to help your client, then do the dummy return before that. Whatever data is now finalized by him for the period, have a dummy return prepared, scrutinize it, and then have it filed by the client. Or let him file. One should never gather the data which he supplies to you and from your office sitting your team files. This is a huge responsibility you might be taking upon yourself. And everybody might not be doing themselves. Ultimately, you rely upon your team. Team is consisting mainly of the young chartered accountants or aspiring chartered accountants or commerce graduates. There can be some mistake. I have seen few chartered accountant friends of mine getting into severe hardship because of the genuine bona fide lapses committed by their team members. And then you will be at the mercy of the client. If the client suffers a loss or some demand, huge demand because of the mistake committed at your end, can entail a lot of adverse consequences. So it is think over, reflect over. It all depends upon the practice. But it may not be advisable. Because I can see that. And I've been witnessing this in such days when really CF fraternity got into the indirect expertise. Who can issue summons? Section 2, subsection 91 defines the term proper officer in short, and then there is a notification 14/2017, central tax entry number 8. Coupled with this, you have to, a proper officer can be superintendent. The one question which could be begging an answer is whether superintendent audit can issue the summons or not. If you see notification 14/2017, SIO, Senior Intelligence Officer of the DGGI, superintendent audit, and they have been all designated or assigned the power for the purpose of issue of the summons under section 70. So he can issue the summons. Their functions and all. These are all, I'll be sharing this PPT, I'm also finalizing it. Yesterday night, whatever I could do, my office has done this, but I'm further fine tuning it, and the committee members, I'll be sharing this, which can be shared with all not only the participants, all the complete thing. Because it will be in two parts. My part 1 will contain all the relevant statutory provisions connected with the subject. Which are relevant, like all the actual latest text, the provision which is existing as on date, which will be part 1. This is part 2. which I will be further fine tuning it and sending it. Is summons a notice? This is another glaring misconception which is actually hurting the eye day in, day out. Forget about summons. Every single communication coming from the officer is not a notice. Please firmly take it out from your mind. It is very, very common for the client to tell you, कुछ भी लेटर आता है, तो साहब जरा नोटिस आया है GST से, आप जरा देख लो ना. It is very easy for him to say, he is a client, he is a poor taxpayer, he is not supposed to know the law, but we as professionals are supposed to know the difference between a communication and the notice. Please firmly establish in your mind that notice means so-called notice under section 73 and 74. Every communication coming from the department is not a notice. Even if section 61 ASMT 10, the title is notice of discrepancies, it is not a notice. Even if DRC 01A is a title intimation, it is not a notice. A letter quantifying the demand against your client is not a notice. A notice means show cause notice. Once you have understood this difference, the major part of your problems will get solved, because your thinking will become clear what you are dealing with and how to deal with that. A letter giving the grounds, a letter giving the quantification, but if it is simply a letter and asking you simpliciter to pay it, is not a notice. It is merely a communication. Summons is not a notice. Summons is merely an intimation issued by a proper officer calling the person to appear before him to tender evidence or produce evidences in connection with the inquiry which he is conducting under the GST law. Simple. Period. So it is not a notice. So therefore when a summons comes, chalo bulawa aaya hai, Raja ne bulaya hai, don't get into panic mode and run to the office. The summons and DIN, document identification number, it has been now made compulsory. Board circular is binding on the department. And why summons? Every single communication coming from the department has to have a DIN. Insist upon DIN. If the summons does not carry DIN, it may not vitiate the inquiry per se. It means that he may be able to continue, but we should have a courage to tell them that this summons does not contain DIN as mandated by the board by its circular. Further Supreme Court judgment directing everybody, all the state authorities, to see that the DIN is mentioned. So let him go. Don't get afraid. Don't be under fearful mode कि ऐसे ऑफिसर को कैसे बोल सकते हैं कि DIN नहीं है, अभी आपका समझ आप वापस इश्यू करो. Make them work. Make them understand the law is your right, and if we don't do as professional, who will do this? So if any communication is without DIN, politely write that this, you may respond to it otherwise, but there has to be a paragraph that this communication does not carry the mandatorily prescribed DIN in terms of the board circular number so and so, so and so. That contention should be there. Inquiry. Now, if you see section 70 language, it uses the word inquiry, and then it further says, subsection 2 of section 70, that it shall be deemed to be judicial proceedings. Every section, the summons format is also the same. The format which is prescribed by the board is the same as has been in vogue for years and years and decades under excise, and then thereafter continued under service tax also. Standard format, there is no change in that. So there you will find that if you fail to appear, or it's a judicial proceeding, section 193 and section 228 of the CRPC. Then what does that mean? First of all, inquiry. There is a difference between inquiry and inquiry. Inquiry means investigation, and inquiry means seeking information, maybe of a general nature. The word uses inquiry. So it postulates, it presupposes some sort of investigation. And the section 70 this distinction becomes important for more than one reason. Nowhere section 70, it says that it should be deemed to be judicial proceedings. Section 70 uses the word in connection with an inquiry being conducted by the proper officer, and then it says it shall be deemed to be judicial proceedings. Now, is there a difference between inquiry and proceedings? We'll come to that. This has been very, very beautifully and in detail explained by Allahabad High Court in GK Trading Corporation. What is the difference between inquiry and proceedings? So, what is being the action which is contemplated, which is being taken by a proper officer under section 70 can be treated as proceedings, or is it merely inquiry? This has a lot of bearing on the parallel proceedings by the different authorities. I'll explain to that in a while. So, section 70, inquiry and inquiry. The next part is, before we come to that, typically a summons will read like, whereas it appears to the undersigned that your presence is necessary in connection with an inquiry under the GST law or GST evasion being conducted by the undersigned, you are called upon to appear before the undersigned on so and so date for tendering the evidence and to produce the following. It may be nil, or it may have been, some documents may have been specified also. Okay, produce this and come before this. The question here is the proper officer obliged in law to mention the subject matter of inquiry? This is the question. In connection with what subject? Is it GST evasion? Is it fraudulent availment of ITC? Is it a classification related dispute? Or is it a exemption notification related dispute? Or is it a valuation related dispute? Chief causes of the litigation. Is he supposed to mention this? A very interesting question, which now may become very important because of the recent circular issued by the board on 30th March 2024 with a view to ease the business, they do the business in India. Board has issued a detailed circular on 30th March 2024 outlining the guidelines for how to conduct the investigation. I mean, what is to be done by the officers. A detailed guideline, very interesting guideline. We may see a lot of fireworks on this guideline in the coming days. At serial number I, the board says of this circular that the summons should not be in general in connection with GST evasion, in connection with GST law, some inquiry under GST law. It should mention the subject matter also, that this inquiry is connection with what. So if there is a suspicion regarding the wrong availment of ITC, what is expected as per the board instruction, the summons should clearly mention that it is in connection with the wrongful availment of ITC under GST law. It's a good instruction which gives an idea to the taxpayer that what is being contemplated, what is he has to look forward to in the as a scope of the inquiry, and he would be prepared for that. The question here is this: this is a very recent instruction. We will see some, as I said, some fireworks in the coming days on this, because in one of the old judgments of the Madras High Court, where the Madras High Court has said that there is nothing wrong if the subject matter is not mentioned in the summons, because it will put the party on the guard, and then he will be prepared for that, the manipulation or maneuvering of the documents, etc. The High Court says a summons is not vitiated merely because the subject matter is not mentioned. In connection with what the inquiry is being undertaken by him, this is probably it is TTV Dinakaran case, followed in the K.A. Mansoor case also. TTV Dinakaran, 1995-80 ALT 745 Madras. And another important judgment is K.A. Mansoor, the 2010-258 ELT A91 Madras, 491 Madras. In K.A. Mansoor case, the wordings were that the officer can exercise the power under section 17 of all the powers of civil code. Same provision under, this was a case of FEMA, same power. And then the High Court said in K. Mansoor case that merely because they are close with the powers of civil code, it does not mean that all the provisions or the procedure of civil code has to be followed. This is the intricate subject because FEMA sections, section 108 to some extent, but at least FEMA sections are slightly differently worded than at least previous cases. Now it is FEMA. But anyway, but this has to be kept in mind. So I am expecting that there could be some disputes over this requirement of mentioning the subject matter of the inquiry in the summons. But taking cue, board circular is binding, these are instructions. If a summons comes in a general nature, then it is the right of the taxpayer to write to the officer that yes, we have received your summons, but this is merely saying inquiry under GST law. Please be specific, inquiry in connection with what under GST law. And you can refer to the instruction. It's a question of mustering. Whatever, many things which I would be actually sharing with you may require, it may sound very strange to many of you over here, and it's a question of mustering the courage to really mention that. How can we? Singda kon barave? You know? And we have got to come out with this mentality, sooner the better. If you think that you have seen worst of the GST friends, you have not seen anything of GST. The real fun will start now. You know, it's a sheer jungle raj which is prevalent under GST by and large. It's a complete anarchy, unfortunately. And it's our bounden duty to really protect our client and at least make them aware of their rights. And we can do that only if we are aware of what are their rights. And we should have courage to exercise that right. I don't say that you take up the fight at everything, but we are taxpayers for God's sake. And we are professionals. If we don't take up the case for our client, who will take up? Client is looking forward to us. So if this is missing, write politely to the department, to the proper officer. Coming to judicial proceeding, it merely says section 193 giving the false evidence, section 228 then insulting the proper officer who is discharging his duty under the law or creating the interruption while he is discharging the law. These two are actually punishable. It merely says so. So when you send this section 193 and 228 mention in the GS under the summons, don't get panicky about that also. Inquiry. Presence of the counsel during the. I'm just touching upon certain important aspects. This has been, since decades, this has been one of the major causes of the fight between the department, interrogating officer, inquiring officer and the taxpayer. Whether the lawyer can be presented, can remain present at the time of the recording of the statement of the party or not. Without going too much into the details, by and large, these recent all judgments, particularly of Bombay High Court, have more or less recognized the party's right to have the lawyer's presence during the interrogation, during the recording of the statement. However, the lawyer should be present not within the audible distance, only within the visible distance. So he can watch the proceedings, he cannot intervene, he cannot listen to what is going on. But his presence will probably, smoothen the nerves of the party, his taxpayer, nothing untoward will happen during interrogation. Can the taxpayer who has been called during for the recording of the statement, can he insist upon that there has to be a CCTV camera? And my recording should be undertaken only under CCTV? The answer is yes. So when a person is actually in adherence to the summons, going for the recording of the statement, he can make a request in writing in advance that if a statement is intended to be recorded under section 70 in terms of the summons issued to me, when I present myself, then it is requested to do it under CCTV camera. There's a Supreme Court judgment on this which can be relied upon. The question is, I mean, we should have that courage to say that, okay, please CCTV camera, otherwise I will not come. You can insist upon that. Response and reply to summons, but before that I'll take challenge to summons. Can the summons be challenged under Article 226 before the High Court? Answer, Article 226 is an omnibus article. One can challenge anything and everything. But is it advisable to challenge the summons? My answer would be on your guard when you are challenging the summons. Almost this judgment, and I have called out only a few, all these judgments, the petitioner has lost the case. What I am finding under GST, justifiably or unjustifiably it may be, and that is, suddenly there is a spurt in the writ petitions in the High Court. Everywhere. On every single cause we are rushing to the High Court. We advocates have become really trigger happy. I have inborn allergy for High Court. In the sense, I take my client to High Court only as a last resort. With my limited experience, I have only learned one thing. Once I go to the High Court, the doors are closed behind me. I may come out better or I may come out in a better. I don't know that. Be very careful when you are rushing to the High Court. Please be very careful. It should be your last resort. It can't be your first resort. Apart from alternative remedy, there are many other cases. In all these cases, most of the cases, the petitioners have been actually adventurous enough to go to the High Court at the summons stage, get this summons. Please understand, unless you are, I'll come to that reply or response. So, be careful. Unless it is a absolutely frivolous summonses continuously being called upon you, which now board has also said no. Board has also said any information which is digitally available should not be asked to be furnished by the party. If he is asking for GSTR 3B and GSTR 1, you are not supposed to give them to them. You can simply say these are available digitally on the portal. Do not have to take the printout and then give it to them. Whatever is available digitally, GSTR 9, GSTR 9C, 1, 3B, any other returns which you are filing, everything which is available digitally, if the summons says, okay, please produce all these things, apart from the information which you are required to produce, whatever is available digitally, one can say, okay, these are already filed by us and available on portal. No need to again compile them and give it to the summons. Absolutely no need. There was no need earlier also. Now with the board instruction at clause J of the circular, it is become very clear. So the other part is about the reply or response. Never get into the panic mode, as I say, when the summons is issued, and never ignore the summons. Both. Summons has to be responded. If the information is being asked for, compile the information. If it takes going to take some time, ask for the time. If on the given date, if your taxpayer is unable to appear, ask for the date politely. If the information is ready, please don't delay. There is no point in delaying the matter. There is no point in stalling the matter. Ultimately, you are only unnecessarily creating the tension and unnecessary wastage of time, money, and energy all around. And who knows? Later on, if this entire matter goes to the High Court, where the initial investigation may be under challenge, then all this stalling and delaying the matter may really boomerang upon you. So don't delay unnecessarily. If you are going to take the time, don't say that I am out of station or I was medically, I am already. Gone are those days. लिख लेते थे कि I am not well, डॉक्टर का सर्टिफिकेट दे दिया. Or I am out of station. It's a minute's job for the officer to find out whether you are enjoying in Madhuban resort or you are somewhere else. So don't make the story. Be politely, very clear. If you want to take the time, and don't ask for 1 month and 2 months and 3 months. Nobody is going to give you. It will only hurt your case. But don't ever. So therefore, don't get into panic mode. But don't ignore the summons. Unless you happen to be Chief Minister of a state or union, then you have a right to ignore the summons. then you can manage it. But otherwise, please respond to the summons. Summons, investigation and search. The overlapping, I'll take up this topic right now only because section 67 in detail, there is no point. I don't want to go into too much on detail. The one major issue is about the parallel proceedings. Administratively, the taxpayer is under state GST authorities jurisdiction or central GST authorities jurisdiction. Under cross empowerment under section 6 of the CGSTA, both can undertake the investigation. Cross empowerment is part of the federal structure and part of the GST law. It is inevitable and can't help it. However, section 6(2)(b, read with the board circular of 5/10/2018 about the parallel investigation, one has to see that two authorities can undertake the parallel investigation on the same subject matter against the taxpayer or not. Suppose the taxpayer is under state GST authorities jurisdiction who has initiated some inquiry on some inquiry on a particular subject. Can on the same subject matter, central GST authorities whether preventive, jurisdictional authority, preventive, anti-evasion or DGGI, can they do that? First of all, let me clarify, this is an issue where no common answer can be expected and should be expected. Everything will revolve around the facts of the case. All these judgments, these are only few, where somewhere the parallel proceedings by the authorities have been quashed by the High Court, somewhere the High Court has refused to intervene also. First of all, GK Trading Company, the Allahabad High Court judgment, very clearly I suggest and I request, please go through this judgment, one of the most illuminating judgments on this aspect, what is the difference between inquiry and proceeding. This judgment has become important because there were proceedings initiated under section 74 and simultaneously other authority had initiated the summons proceeding under section 70. And this was challenged, that there can't be simultaneous proceeding. High Court distinguished between inquiry and proceeding. Inquiry is an inception stage under section 70. It cannot be equated with the proceedings. Proceeding means ascertainment of the demand, penalty, interest, so cause notice, right? So these are the proceedings. Board circular says that there can't be simultaneous proceeding on the same subject matter evaluated by the two authorities. It does not preclude the department, other authority, from initiating the summons proceeding under summons action under section 70. It is in this context this judgment becomes important. That section 70 inquiry can continue even though there is a so cause notice by the other authority. This is one part, followed in coupon grounder case also. Again, the Raj Metal Industries, these are all on the same line. In Kaushal Kumar Mishra case, there was a DGGI Kanpur and DGGI Ludhiana. Both had initiated the action against the taxpayer. The High Court refused to intervene, saying that they both are different entities and the DGGI, even though the subject matter is the same, Ludhiana DGGI undertaking the inquiry and Kanpur undertaking the inquiry, there is nothing wrong in that. The Ideal Unique Realtors, there were multiple proceedings by different authorities against the party and none were being brought to the conclusion. They were being continued just like that. The High Court intervened and paused the proceeding and directed the department to conclude the proceeding. There were multiple proceedings by the same authority and none were coming to the logical conclusion. They were just continuing with the inquiry. High Court intervened. In Vivek Narsaria, this is another important case, Madras High Court, that where the High Court observed there was a state GST authorities who had initiated the action prior to DGGI came into picture. DGGI is central GST authorities. State GST authorities under whose jurisdiction the party was Vivek Narsal, they had already initiated the action on the same subject matter when the DGGI Noida had actually initiated the inquiry. DGGI sought to justify their action that we should take up because we are the prime body, we have a all India jurisdiction. The High Court said no, you do not enjoy any special power over the state GST authorities. They have initiated the action first, let them complete the job. So the DGGI authorities were taken out of the picture and they were directed to forward all the investigation report to the state GST authorities. Very interesting and very important judgment. Neeraj Jain, here again summons by CGST authorities and SGST authorities both were issued simultaneously, and these were, but however, High Court on facts found that one is against the unit in Maharashtra, another is against the party's unit in Bihar. So the Patna High Court said nothing wrong. These are two different entities, maybe of the same taxpayer. So two separate authorities undertaking the investigation on the both same subject matter against two different, because they are considered to be a distinct person under section 25, and therefore there is nothing wrong in that. Siddhi Vinayak trading. Here also the petition has been dismissed when it was challenged on the ground that two authorities cannot. Section 74 SOCOS notice had already been issued and order had already been passed. There was a separate summons issued. Party challenged the summons. High Court refused to entertain. Supreme Court passed an order. Supreme Court said we do not see any reason to interfere. However, because order has been passed and there is appellate remedy available, please go for the appeal. With this observation, Supreme Court dismissed the SLP filed by the party. Indo-International Tobacco, there were several investigation and ultimately the DGGI was directed to forward the investigation material to the first authority, SGST, who had undertaken the investigation in the Neeraj Jain case. The Bhavani Textiles, again Gujarat, Bhavani Textiles, this is one important judgment where the High Court took note of both Bhavani Textiles as well as the another recent of the Vipul Chandra Mehta case. In both these cases, particularly Bhavani Textiles, the most cited judgments, where Gujarat High Court took the note of the 5/10/2018 circular of the board that whoever has first initiated the action, he will complete the investigation. That's what the High Court said in Bhavani Textile. And by Bow Construction, again, it was a case of inquiry by CGST and SGST officer. The Patna High Court refused to entertain, but however, with the observation that ultimately it was demanded that whoever has initiated the action first. Vipul Chandra Mehta, the same cases. So, before we challenge the parallel proceedings initiated by two authorities, one has to be very clear about the facts, that whether it can be challenged in the context of section 6 to be read with the board circular or not. Another aspect which yesterday Urjit Bhai actually covered, these are the latest judgments. During the course of inquiry on investigation under section 70 or a summons inquiry and thereafter followed by the investigation, visit to the premises, any cash or currency found cannot be seized. Case cannot come under thing. As a matter of fact, philosophically speaking, all these judgments ultimately emphasize upon that cash or money is nothing. And we spend our lives for actually, collecting them. But I don't say, sir. High Court says case is nothing. Okay? So the case cannot be seized. Before I come to audit part, it's not part of my PPT. This is section 17. Now we come to section 61, scrutiny of returns. As I said earlier, scrutiny of the returns is basically a novel feature in a sense that it was never there in excise or service tax. So it's a legacy from the VAT, and they have many provisions and many dangerous provisions of GST laws flow from the VAT regime. Section 16(2)(c), we never had that provision under Samvad credit rules, that if the buyer does not make the payment, Samvad credit will be disallowed to the supplier. To the buyer, sorry, supplier does not make the payment. Never had this. Frauds were happening at that time also. I'll come to that. So this annual return, we never had that annual return in excise and service tax. It's a legacy from the VAT. Because they are used to that annual return concept. They are used to that scrutiny of the assessment return. And they have actually prevailed upon the policymakers and the draftsmen to have this type of provision introduced, which is creating the hurt all around and creating havoc, chaos everywhere. And you have to deal with it for some unforeseeable period of time. So the question is scrutiny of returns. A proper officer undertakes the scrutiny of the returns, mainly 3B, and he comes to the conclusion that there are some discrepancies. Section 61 requires that intimation of the discrepancies to the taxpayer by the proper officer, seeking the explanation thereon, and if the explanation is not forthcoming or explanation is not found satisfactory, then he can initiate action under section 66 or section 67, 65 or 66, or determination of duty under section 73 or 74, subsection 2 of section 61. Now, scrutiny of returns and discrepancies. These discrepancies are normally revolve around 12 parameters. Parameter 73, parameter 74, parameter 106, parameter 107, like that. And what comes in the form of discrepancies? Normally the reproduction of the provision, a table, mainly most of the ASMT trade which are flying around across the country are of three types, mainly 2A versus 3B. Second is supplier NGTP or RC cancelled, NGTP non-genuine taxpayer, or difference between the GSTR 9 and GSTR 3B. These are the main. Okay. Now, as far as GSTR 9 and 3B is concerned, there is not much to say about. Reconciliation responsibility is ours, because both are statutory returns, both are being filed by the taxpayer. So taxpayer has to reconcile them. But when it comes to 2A versus 3B, or when it comes to the RC cancelled NGTP supplier for which risk involved, which is basically ITC sought to be disallowed, the legal position is entirely different. What is 2A? 2A is an auto-populated statement. It is never filed by the taxpayer. Now it is 2B. But since there are thousands and thousands of cases which are being made out or which are there in the pipeline, which are there at the different stages of the adjudication, this aspect becomes very important. 2A is auto-populated statement. 3B is filed by the taxpayer. Now 2A will only capture those invoices which are actually uploaded by the suppliers. If the supplier for any reason has not uploaded the invoice, 2A will not capture it. And once the supplier's invoices are not visible, the quantum of ITC available at the end of the period which is shown on the 2A vis-a-vis what is being availed as per the 3B returns, the difference is sought to be denied as an excess ITC availed by the party. Is it permissible in law? Is it legally permissible in law? My answer is straight no. If the supplier's invoices are not visible on 2A, it merely creates a presumption and a rebuttable presumption that there is something wrong at the end of the supplier. He may not have discharged the tax liability, but it is a rebuttable presumption. The non-reflection or non-uploading of the invoice by a particular supplier can be for a number of reasons, including posting the wrong GSTIN. All of you might have come across the cases where the particular supplies are not even obtained by your client and still he is being shown as a recipient of their supply, because your GSTN number has been posted by the supplier, and whereas actually you have not obtained their supply at all. Your buyer client has not obtained their supply. So it is a rebuttable presumption. And there what I said in the initial part of my talk, and that is the transaction-based tax character of the GST comes into play. GST is a transaction-based tax. Every single transaction creates the rights in favor of the taxpayer and liabilities or obligations against him. How does it become important under 2A versus 3B? Law does not allow the department to gross up the amount of ITC as per 2A and take the figure of the gross amount of GSTR 3B credit, difference wrongly availed, please reverse. Law does not allow this. There is not a single provision in the law, in the GST laws, which permits the department to create forget about deny or recover, to create a demand merely on the basis of 2A versus 3B on the gross level. It is a bounded duty of the proper officer to inform the taxpayer, this is the difference. My 2A says 75 lakh, you have taken 1 crore, this 25 lakh is the difference. These are the transactions involved into this 25 lakhs. And these are the suppliers who appears to have not actually paid the tax, because they have not uploaded the invoices. It means that they have not discharged the tax because they might have done something with the 3B, GSTR 1 उन्होंने file नहीं किया होगा. Presumption. But okay, he is entitled to do that, carry on with that presumption. But he has to identify the transactions, he has to identify who are the suppliers, and that give that information to the recipient taxpayer saying that these are the parties. He cannot, law does not ask somebody to prove the contrary. Fundamental principle of law. I cannot be asked to identify which are the transactions. Now the officer cannot do this, and he doesn't want to do this. And he does not even do this also, because nobody asked him to do so. Nobody takes this plea. And why he cannot do? Because he has only that information which is available on 2A. The invoices which are in addition to that, whatever is always as per the ledger accounts of the party as well as the 3B in the books of account. He has a right to ask for the books of accounts. Okay, there is a difference visible. Please produce your ledger accounts of all the ITC which you have availed on the 3B. And from there he has to identify. And then give it to the, again, come back to the taxpayer. That this is the difference, these are the transactions not visible. He cannot simply demand the reversal of the ITC merely on the basis of the 2A versus 3B at the gross level. Absolutely illegal without the authority of law demand. Absolutely. It's a transaction-based tax. And then the matter does not end there. After having done so, it is the taxpayer further right to tell the officer, fine, these are the parties. On one hand, you can take up the matter with your suppliers who appear to have defaulted or defrauded, whatever it may be. On the other hand, you can write to the department, please also then inform us against those suppliers who apparently may not have discharged the tax liability because their invoices are not appearing on the 2A as per you. Kindly inform us what action has been taken against those suppliers. And what is the status of that action? Whether section 46 action has been taken or not. Whether section 73 action has been taken or not. And mind you, 2A has always been a dynamic statement, unlike 2B, which is a static statement. In 1719, if there is a difference between 2A versus 3B, I am not expected as a taxpayer to undertake the scrutiny of 2A as existing on 22nd May 2024. Okay, later on whether the supplier has corrected the fault or not. He might have done, he might have belatedly filed the return and discharged the tax liability along with the interest and late fee and penalty. Am I supposed to undertake this exercise? My answer is no. It is the officer's responsibility to do that. And you can very well ask for. I have never given the reconciliation on behalf of my client to any 2A versus 3B, ever. Unfortunately, we scramble, we spend day and night in reconciling. And then we come out with all sorts of different defense that my transaction is genuine, I have received the supplies, I have paid to the party, this is what, this is what, this is what. He is going to throw out that to the dustbin. For him, if the difference exists. I never allow my client to do the reconciliation for 2A versus 3B from the legal, from the departmental perspective. Business perspective, they undertake. It's a different matter. But it's not my job to do that. It's my client's job. Ask him to do that. Let him work, let him earn his salary. So it's your right to ask for that. Because this is a transaction-based tax. I am not required to identify the transaction involved in the difference between 2A versus 3B. Coming to RC cancelled NGTB. What is NGTB? Non-genuine taxpayer. Where is this term in the law? It's a portal created term. It has no sanctity. There can't be non-genuine taxpayer. There can only be taxpayer whose transaction may be non-genuine. You can't have a non-genuine taxpayer. All taxpayers are genuine taxpayers when they are issued the registration. His transaction can be non-genuine. How can there be a non-genuine taxpayer? How can there be a fake transaction? Transaction is transaction. It becomes illegal transaction, not recognized for the purpose of ITC under section 16 if any of the conditions, 6 conditions of the section 16(2) is breached. That's a different matter. There can't be like fake billing as such, but there can't be non-genuine taxpayer. You have got to, this is not a technical point. The one thing, which I keep on hearing, we are old-fashioned. We are trained in a very old-fashioned way. So please bear with me. Some of the things I may say may sound very strange to all of you. But I am what I am. I am a very orthodox-minded person because I am trained in a different way. What you consider is a technical majority of the professional, for us, they may be fundamental to the very validity of the proceedings. I'll give you some example as we go for proceedings. So write to them. There can't be no. Fine. Okay, these are the people, because it can be either EIU, Economic Investigation, their intelligence unit, or anybody. You have a right to ask for the reports if they are relied upon in ASMD 10 or DRC 01A. Please submit the copy of the report. 1. Secondly, all the suppliers who are branded as non-genuine taxpayers, please inform us what action has been taken against them. If it is RC cancelled, whether RC was cancelled by following the show cause notice process. If yes, whether order is passed, ask for the copy of the order of cancellation of your supplier registration. If yes, whether he has filed the appeal or not, ask for the copy of the appeal. What is the status of the appeal? Ask for that also. This is all your right, and you must ask for this. RC cancelled retrospectively. There are series of judgments. Garbo Traders, Sachin Kundu, Suncraft, the most horribly misinterpreted judgment, Calcutta High Court in Suncraft, in the WhatsApp University. When Supreme Court dismissed the appeal, even before on Friday Supreme Court judgment came out, Thursday the news were across the country, Supreme Court has come to the rescue of the taxpayer. Judgment came out on Friday, but WhatsApp University one step ahead of Supreme Court. And nowadays we are witnessing this every time. Even before any circular or instruction or any notification even signed by the member in the board, before issuing, the text is already out in the WhatsApp. Nothing secret, nothing sacred in this law, in these times nowadays. So the point is that Suncraft, the Supreme Court, because of the meagerness of the amount involved, the Supreme Court declined to interfere. Supreme Court has not affirmed the judgment in such a manner that it would become a binding precedent. I would go to the extent of saying that even against the same petitioner company, if department comes across any further actual evidence, they can again make out the same case against the party for the subsequent period. YS Bethel, Madras High Court, one of the first judgments, again horribly projected in an absolutely disgusting manner. What YS Bethel has said, the buyer who sought to be disallowed the credit on the ground that the supplier has committed a fraud, husband-wife supplier, they had asked for the cross-examination of their suppliers and they were absconding. And then Madras High Court said, fine, under section 16(2)(c you may proceed against the buyer, but you cannot only proceed against the buyer. You have got to proceed against the supplier first. And that is what the Mahalakshmi Jinning, from where all this story started. Mahalakshmi Jinning, Bombay High Court, section 54, Maharashtra VAT Act. The validity of which was upheld by the Bombay High Court, by the bench, presided over by Honorable Justice Y.C. Chandrachud, who is right now our Honorable Chief Justice. But in that judgment, Maharashtra government had also filed an affidavit. And in that affidavit, the High Court, the Maharashtra government has given a lot of undertakings. We will proceed against the supplier. If we recover, the refund will be given to the buyer without filing the refund claim also. Justice Chandrachud took note of this affidavit in the last paragraph of the judgment and said that yes, we have taken due note of the affidavit and we hope that the state government will abide by it. The entire idea of section 54, buyer not making the payment, supplier not making the payment, buyer should be denied the credit, came down under form of section 16(2)(c). Affidavit is quietly forgotten. And that battle goes on. My series has been there. I have written 6 articles on this in Lex India Online, which are freely available, and that is ITC under GST, supplier sins, recipient repents. So in the last part, I have discussed the entire Mahalakshmi. I am concluding that part. Unfortunately, it was quite a delayed effort on my part, but should not have been. But there are some circumstances. I am concluding the last part also now in upcoming days. So Arise India, Bharti Airtel, YS Bethel, Cargo Traders, Suncraft, Sachin Kondu, all these judgments ultimately bring to that 2A versus 3B or RC cancel. What RC cancel? Retrospective cancellation of RC does not mean my transaction has become non-genuine. Number 1. RC cancellation per se has no nexus with the genuineness of the transaction. This is the point we have to understand. My supplier can be genuinely holding the registration even today. My transaction with him can be non-genuine. I can enter into a non-genuine adjustment transaction with him. He is a otherwise genuine supplier today also. But I can enter into some adjustment on a particular case. And my supplier can be non-genuine at the time when he made the supply, but my supply can be genuine. So NGTP and all, you have to fight it tooth and nail. From the no, not give all the documents and all. Keep Ecom jail also in mind. Supreme Court, Karnataka paid. Honorable Justice retired now. MR Shah's judgment. Department is citing that judgment everywhere. Ecom jail, but Ecom jail only creates some barriers for the taxpayer to establish the genuineness of the transaction. It is not beginning and end of the day. So, likewise, 9 and 9 I said. So ASMT 10. ASMT 10 reply is to be given in ASMT 11. And then when ASMT 11 is not followed, the explanation is not found satisfactory, which will never be found satisfactory because there is no meaning, there is no specific meaning of word satisfactory. Satisfaction has a lot of use and cries in indirect text. Satisfaction can be of different types. And it actually depends upon the officer and the taxpayer. How the taxpayer can satisfy the revenue officer. I need not go into detail into that, you know it better than me. The word satisfactory. How would you satisfy the tax officer? So it is not found to be satisfactory, then the action under 7374 will follow. Section 66 special audit. Section 67 investigation. There is a complete dichotomy between the provisions of subsection 2 of section 61 and reference to section 66 and 67. If ASMT 10 reply is not found satisfactory, if the reply is not found, then action under section 66 can be initiated. I don't know what is the the logic behind this type of provision. Does it mean that he has to, the special audit can follow? Does it mean investigation can follow? Answer is yes and no. And then there is a problem regarding the who has initiated the action under section 61 as a designated officer, state tax officer, superintendent, CGST, or assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner. Who can undertake the action under section 67? Only joint commissioner. There is a complete dichotomy between these two. One of the most horrendously drafted provisions under GST law. Entire law is horrendously drafted. So the second part is about under section 7374. SOCO's notice can follow under 7374. Please understand, the dispute is going on whether issue of ASMT 10 is mandatory or a precondition before issue of the SOCO's notice under section 7374. This is the issue which is going on. Guwahati High Court has given an entry freely direction. ASMT 10 is mandatory. My personal view is issue of ASMT 10 is not a precondition for issue of the so-called notice under 73 or 74. It does not even flow from the language. So-called notice under 73 or 74 can be based on the independent material also, classification, valuation, exemption, clandestine removal, suppressed production, wrong availment of IDC, in breach of 17.5, fraudulent availment of IDC. There can be any number of reasons for which an action under 73 or 74 can be taken by issue of the so-called notice by the officer. The ASMT 10 is not a precondition for the issue of the so-called notice under section 73 or 74. And there are two judgments of the High Court on this. And I am expecting that the judgment will hold the field. And that is Nagarjuna Agrochemicals, Allahabad High Court, two judgments. And then Devi Traders, there is another judgment. In Vedivel Pyrotech, there was a discrepancy between DRC 01 and ASMT 10. The discrepancy, this is a very important judgment. Vedivel Pyrotech Private Limited, 68 GSTL 120. The discrepancies which were pointed out in ASMT 10, the DRC 01, that is so-called notice, a summary of the so-called notice. The so-called notice came on another aspect. This discussed the so-called notice was based on the material which was not forming the part of the ASMT 10. High Court intervened. Very important judgment. But otherwise, I do not see any reason why there should be first ASMT 10 and then only so-called notice can follow. The law, scheme of the law does not justify this type of view at all. Coming to audit, section 65. The scheme of the audit is again based on the erstwhile scheme of audit under GST, under excise and service tax. We have been following Canadian year 2000 model, which is a year 2000 model. Hardly anything. It has been fine-tuned coming with the, because this is a digitization era, and accordingly it has been fine-tuned with some additional features or additional coverage under GST because of the entire scope of the GST laws. But otherwise, this audit is entirely not different than. Once comes the notice ADD 01, this is notice, it is basically an intimation. It is proposed to undertake this audit for this period, led by a team of so and so between this and this date. Please keep the following information ready, records ready, or provide the following documents. Fine. If you need the time, please ask for the time and compile the record. 2. Audit is undertaken. Section 65, subsection 6. ADD 02 report is issued, final report. Before that, observations are sent. Party is expected to reply to that. Then final observations. The points which are not accepted by the party, which are not again accepted by the department, the tug of war will go on. The auditor's point will not be accepted by the party. Party's explanation will not be accepted by the auditors. So finally, it will lead to section 65(7)(8), so-called notice under 73-74. The point here is one has to be very careful while replying to ASMT 10 audit, and next stage is DRC 01A. I'll take up that and then I'll just say whatever just a couple of things I want. DRC 01 is a pre-notice consultation. Pre-notice consultation comes, the idea was mooted, the genesis of this particular provision lies in the Parthasarthi Som, our noted economist, outstanding economist of our country, Dr. Parthasarthi Som Committee, Tax Administrative Reform Committee, TARC. We submitted this report in 2014, and where one of the aspects touched upon by the committee was that why there has been so much litigation under direct tax and indirect tax. There has to be a mechanism that before actually getting into litigation, both the parties should come together, sit together, department pointing out their own view, and if the party accepts, taxpayer can make the payment and close the proceeding there and then, even before they are initiated. Or if the party's view is accepted by the department may not proceed with the litigation. A very noble idea. This was accepted by the government, and based on that in 2015, Central Board of Excise and Custom issued a circular making it mandatory for the issue of the pre-notice consultation notice, intimation, in excise, customs and service tax, subject to certain riders. This was followed by another circular of 2016. But it was never statutorily recognized by way of an insertion in the provision of the law, but by circular. It was being followed. We have a series of judgments on this, whether the non-issue of the DI, pre-notice consultation. These are the series of judgments where pre-notice consultation was not followed and the high courts have intervened, so-called notice is paid in law. However, in GST in 2020, no, under Rule 142, Sub-Rule 1A, A capital was introduced, making it mandatory for the issue of the pre-notice consultation notice intimation under DRC 01A. It was shall issue. After 3 months, probably the government realized that we are putting too much burden on our overburdened officers. So poor fellow are not able to actually, cope up with this type of burden. So shall become may. He may issue, right? Immediately in 3-4 months, totally. So now we have a very piquant situation, whether DRC 01A is mandatory or not. These are the judgments which are fine. And when it was not even recognized by statute, but there were board instructions which were found to be binding by the high courts. What is the position under GST law? So how normally the process would work? ASMT 10 followed by DRC 01A or may not be followed by DRC 01A, state show cause notice under 73 or 74. ADT 02 followed by DRC 01A or may not be followed by DRC 01A and show cause notice under 73 or 74. Generally, ADT 02 should serve as a purpose of DRC 01A is my opinion. There may not be necessity for DRC 01A thereafter because ADT is already, ADT 02 gives the comprehensive idea about the objection or the issues involved. Now, the DRC 01A, can we take a right that before issue of the show cause notice, if there is no intimation informed DRC 01A, the notice is vitiated? Can we take this ground? And whether it is mandatory or not? In my personal opinion, may should be read as shall. There are some beautiful judgments of the Supreme Court in the olden days where may and shall has always remained one of the most disputed expressions under the indirect tax laws or tax laws also. When may should be read as shall and where shall should be read as may. Whether may is directory or mandatory, whether shall is directory or mandatory. The tug of war going on. The Supreme Court says whether may should be read as shall or shall should be read as may depends upon the context in which the provision, the word is used and the objective which it seeks to achieve. This is the fundamental guiding principle. The purpose of pre-notice consultation where the genesis lies in the Parsarthi Song Committee report is to avoid the litigation. And when we see the context and the objective, I am inclined to take a view and I am taking this view for whatever is worth. If the show cause notice comes without DRC 01A, I take up the ground that DRC, the show cause notice is initiated because pre-notice consultation intimation is not issued to us. No harm in taking this ground. Subject to that, you can make all other arguments on merit. Now we come to how to deal with ADT 02 and DRC 01A. This is all fine. These are all legal principles, legal fight. At the practical level, be extra careful when you are responding to ADT 02 and DRC 01A, particularly these two, even ASMT 10. Here, the emphasis should be what not to be said. In the show cause notice reply, the emphasis should be what should be said. When you actually go with the bags, tons of bags of full of material, DRC 01A, making him actually agreeing or ADT 02, all the defense which are available at your disposal, when you tell them everything, you know that he is not going to accept your explanation because you have not accepted his objection. Now DRC 01A particularly, when I consider it is a farce, it's a drama, it's an eyewash, it's a trap, absolutely trap for the self-trap for the which the taxpayer is setting for himself. You reply everything, show cause notice comes. In show cause notice DRC 01A reference is given, your submissions reference is given. If you are lucky, there will be reasons why he has not accepted your submissions. Most of the time, the submissions were found unsatisfactory. So now you are hereby required to show cause as to why this amount should not be collected from you, toward ITC disallowable or tax demanded. You have already actually given him all your defense at the DRC 01A, which he has already discarded, rejected. What are we going to say in our defense to the show cause notice now? Simple logic. One need not be Einstein for this. And as Sherlock Holmes would say to Dr. Watson, his colleague, It's elementary, my dear Watson. You can't expose your entire defense at ADD 02 and DRC 01 stage. You should not. You have got to be extremely careful and diplomatic when you reply to that. It cannot be vague or superficial reply. It cannot be detailed reply as if you are answering to the so cause notice, hoping against hope that he will close the proceeding. What if he does not close the proceeding, which he will never, most of the times. Then you will have nothing to fight with at the so cause notice. Is the fate accomplished. You have already burnt your bridge behind you. Be very careful when you reply to DRC 01A or ADT 02. And then that brings us to the so cause notice. There are two provisions, so cause notice, and I'll just quickly. So cause notice is the most important aspect. From here the real battle starts. The actual battle really starts from here, which can end up in Supreme Court. And therefore, at the so cause notice stage, one has to be extremely clear about how we deal with the matter. So cause notice sets the boundary for the department beyond which they cannot play till Supreme Court. Our reply will create the circumference within which we have to play right up to Supreme Court. The only point is that we have some, as a taxpayer, has some facility for additional ground and additional evidence which he can actually raise or place on record at the appellate stage, first appeal, second appeal. But again, the taxpayer will be at the mercy of the appellate authority. They may allow, he may allow, he may not allow. If he allows, he may ask the taxpayer to go back to the first adjudicating authority, saying that since these grounds were never taken before the first authority or the evidence was not placed before the first authority, let him consider them. So you begin from beginning. Therefore, one has to be very clear when we reply to the so cause notice. It's the most important stage in the entire process of litigation. Because here you are setting the boundary for yourself. If you win, department will go in appeal. If you lose, and in 30-35 years, I have learned only two things while dealing with the litigation. Only two presumptions. I'm not a very brilliant or intelligent person, hardly. But I have learned only, I'm a very grounded person. So I have got only two things. One, you should be good. I am not. But at least I have understood the principle. You should be good at the lawn tennis game. Lawn tennis is basically a game of how effectively you put the ball in the department's court. You should be good at that. And two, I fight every case for losing the case. That is the presumption on which I work. Every single case I am fighting for my client, so cause notice reply, I know that I am going to lose the case. Why I? My client also knows Shailesh is going to lose the case. We never bother about it. I only see whether there is a merit in the matter or not. And my client will get the justice at the upper level or not. If there is no merit in the matter, I don't encourage my client to go for the litigation. It's a costly business. I never encourage my client to go for the litigation. But I prepare the case as if I'm going to fight, I'm going to lose the case. Because if I win the case by chance at the first adjudication level, the department will review section 107 subsection 2 and then I'll end up as a respondent. But I will be before appellate authority. But at the end of the day, it is my reply which will be the savior for me at the upper level. So we never take chance at the first so cause notice level. Never. There is no major ground, there is no minor ground. A ground is ground. Which appeals me, we have to take it. Don't think about whether itna chota ground mein le sakta ho. Every ground is important. Whatever is at your disposal and what your conscience and your competence allows you to, you should take that. The second part is, so cause notice is a must. There is a monetary limit. Power Chemical Supreme Court in the context of excise has very firmly laid down. If monetary limit is set down by the board for the issue of the so cause notice and if it is breached and it is issued by an officer otherwise not having that monetary limit power, it will not vitiate or render the so cause notice invalid. So don't be too much bold or enthusiastic about that. Monetary limit is fine. You can make a submission that board has set this monetary limit under GST also. There are circulars. And this so cause notice has been issued by the officer who did not have this monetary limit. It is beyond the monetary limit. Take a ground, but it will not be conclusive of the proceeding. Power Chemicals followed recently in the Gujarat High Court in this Palak designer case. Then comes to so called a condition precedent. All so called, there cannot be any demand without show cause notice. Recovery during investigation now is absolutely illegal. There is no power on the earth by which an officer can recover or enforce the recovery during investigation. It is only a question of who relents first. Sam, dam, dand, ved. When an investigating officer or something is gone on, पहले वो आपको समझाएंगे टैक्स पेयर को कर दो वरना लिटिगेशन में फंस जाओगे. तो he will use all the powers of understanding which he has his command. Then दाम, गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स दे दो, थोड़ा बहुत कैश मुझे दे दो, तो दाम की बात आ गई. दंड, ये हो जाएगा वो हो जाएगा. Fortunately, there is no punishment of death by hanging under GST or indirect tax. Below that, he will actually explain all the punishment which he can administer to you. ये कर देंगे, वो कर देंगे, अरेस्ट कर देंगे, राइट? आपके बायर को लिख देंगे, पैसा नहीं देंगे, गार्निशिंग प्रोविजन, एवरीथिंग लर्न एंड भेद नीति. इन अ गिवन केस, ये उसने तो ये कर दिया, आपके बायर ने तो ये एक्सेप्ट कर लिया है कि उसने माल विदाउट सप्लाई विदाउट इनवॉइस लिया हुआ है. आपके सप्लायर ने तो कह दिया है, अभी आप क्या एटीसी मेरे मुझसे मांग रहे हो. सप्लायर ने बोल दिया है, सर मैंने सिर्फ इनवॉइस दिया हुआ है. ब्रोकर ने बोल दिया है तो मैंने सिर्फ इनवॉइस ही अरेंज किया हुआ है. साम दाम दंड भेद, एवरीथिंग रूल्स ऑन दैट. Having said that, there is no power on the earth by which Bhumi Associates, as early as in Madhumilan Syntax, Supreme Court, Gokak Patel Wokart, Supreme Court, Metal Forging, Supreme Court, illuminating judgments. These are all good law because the provisions of section 73 and 74 are not entire distinct from the erstwhile section 11A excise, 73 Finance Act and the current section 28 of the Customs Act. The only notable difference is the missing of the omission of the two words, and that is willful misdeclaration and the collusion. There were 5 elements: willful suppression, misdeclaration, misstatement, fraud and collusion. The collusion and misdeclaration are missing for justifiably, so maybe. So only 3 words are there for extended period. Extended period concept is the same. The normal period concept is the same. Only we have now 2 distinct provisions. Normal period section 73, extended period section 74. And therefore all the judgments which have been rendered in the context of so cause notice, validity, limitation, in the context of the erstwhile provisions by the Supreme Court or Tribunal, they will all be good law even under GST. WED did not have this concept of so cause notice. So those who have come or trained under WED may find it difficult because there was no concept of so cause notice. One of the chief causes of the litigation in the country because WED authorities are not used to so cause notice concept. But there can't be any demand without so cause notice. So you're right. When the recovery is made during investigation, you can actually immediately put the retraction, you can file the refund claim. If DRC 04 is not issued and acknowledged, then even though DRC 03 payment is made, you can say that it was never voluntary. Then, mere letter. Essential of the so cause notice. The point is, a so cause notice should contain all the essential details. It is the foundation of the entire process. Vrindavan Beverages Supreme Court. Very pertinent observation in this case. One of the oldest judgments with which we sever, we keep on severing such judgments, and which is often now cited. So cause notice shall not be based on assumption and presumption. As early as in 1978, all sugar mill suppression of production based merely on the mathematical calculation. We have so far not seen the suppression of production and clandestine demol cases much. They will now start all those cases. So all sugar mill, one of the oldest judgments followed in hundreds and hundreds of subsequent judgments. Should so cause notice indicate the amount demanded? Yes and no. There are some issues on that, but anyway, these are certain aspects which I would right now, for the time being, not get into. I'll come to straight to period of limitation. The period of limitation, before that, as I said, there are two periods, normal period and extended period. Normal period, section 73 subsection 1 starts, if there is any non-payment or short payment of tax or refund erroneously granted or input tax credit wrongly availed or wrongly utilized, the proper officer may issue a notice calling upon the party to show cause as to why this amount should not be demanded and why the interest in terms of section 50 should not be recovered. The 73(2) lays down the time limit for issue of the show cause notice. That time limit is linked to section 73(10). The notice should be issued before expiry of the 3 months of the due date for passing the order. What is the due date for passing the order? Section 73(10). Section 73(10), what is the due date for the passing the order? 3 years from the due date of the filing of the annual return. So from the due date of the filing of the annual return, which normally is the 31st December of the subsequent financial year, to the year to which the demand relates. So 18-19, it is suppose 31st December 19. 23-24, it will be 31st December 2024. So from 31st December 2024, 3 years is the time limit set as per the law for passing the order under section 73, so cause notice by the officer, which will expire on 31st December 2027. And before that, 3 months before that, officer has to issue the notice, which will be 30th September 2027. In other words, for the current, the 23-24 financial year, the last date for issue the show cause notice will be 30th September 2027 for 23-24. Now come section 74, which says if there is a non-payment or short payment of tax or refund erroneously granted or ITC wrongly availed or utilized by reason of fraud, willful suppression of facts or misstatement of facts, the time limit will extend to 5 years. And how 5 years? So cause notice should be issued at least 6 months before the expiry of the time limit for issue of the order, which under 74(10) is 5 years from the date of the order. So if during 23-24, if there is any such element of fraud or willful misstatement leading to the non-payment or short payment of tax or erroneously granted refund or ITC wrongly availed or utilized, under 74, the time limit will for issue of the show cause notice will expire on the July, August, September, 30th June 2027. It is 54 months from the due date of filing the annual return. Due date, not actual date of filing the return. It is 54 months. For 73, it is 33 months. And then he has to pass the order. This is the scheme of the thing. Now this is entirely different to what we are used to under excise and service tax, where it was linked to the monthly filing of the return or due date of the monthly filing of return or ST3 return. This is again the legacy of the VAT, because VAT authorities are quite used to annual return, assessment, and then create the demand. It's an absolutely mess and murkier way. This is one of the most dangerous provisions for the setting the unbelievably long time limit in the hands of the officers. Now, the question in the context of 17, 18, 18, 19 particularly is, we have extension order during COVID 35 by 2020 notification 6 March 2020, 4th March 2020, which was issued under section 168A, a special provision enacted by the council, by the government, that was introduced by the council to take care of the certain situation arising by which certain timely action cannot be taken, including pandemic, whereby the limitation period can be extended. Under section 168A, 35 by 2020 was actually issued, which was time and again extended during COVID. Mainly 4 notifications are only for e-way extension period, others are for extension of the passing of the order. The last being 56 by 2023, 27 September 2023. Before that, 9 by 2023, 30th March 2023. 17-18, the time limit was extended, and 18-19 also the time limit for passing the order was extended. For 17-18, it was 31st December 2023. For 18-19, it is 31st January 2024. The question is, whether this extension of the time limit for passing the order, this is only 73, there is no extension, there cannot be extension for 74. Because for 17, 18 extension not necessary for 74 cases. It is not necessary also because the time limit for issue of the so cause notice under extended period for 17, 18 has not yet expired also. This is how this provision is dangerous. 17, 18 extended period. I'll come to that, I'll explain that. So the point is whether this extension of the order means automatic extension for issue of the so cause notice. My answer is no. This is merely an extension of the order. It does not mean department automatically got the powers to issue so cause notice also within this extended period. For 17, 18, the time due date for furnishing the annual return expired on 5th February 2020. 5th February 2020. There are 2 days, 5th February 2020, 6th February 2020. These were the 2 days, which is there in the table. From 5th February 2020, I have to compute 3 years for 73, which expired on 5th February 2023. And before 3 months, 5th November 2022, in my personal opinion, the normal time limit for issue of the so cause notice under 73 expired on 5th November 2022. Any notice issued after 5th November 2022 and maybe extended period as per the board extension order is time barred. Similarly for 18-19, the time limit was extended up to 31st December 2020. And 2020, the time limit expired on 31st December 2023, due date for filing for issue of the order under 7310, 31st December 2023. Before that 3 months, 30th September 2023. Any so cause notice for 18-19 issued after 30th September 2023 for 18-19 is time barred irrespective of the extension order issued by the board. Notification 56 by 2023. There are about 4-5 high courts who are seized of this matter. Notices are issued. We are taking this ground. We are on the process of filing the repetition. I am very, and obviously we are challenging the constitutional validity of 168A also. That's a different matter. But these notices are time barred because, and there is a reason why this extension order does not mean automatic grant of extension for issue of the notice. There was a July 2021 board circular which very clearly laid down emphasis upon the officers to issue timely notice because the time limit was fast approaching. This is July 2021. Before that, board had already extended the time limit for passing the order by amending notification 35 by 2020. Board did not take cognizance of those extension granted. The entire circular only enjoins upon the higher officer to ensure that the so cause notices are issued in time. Board could have very well said, this is despite the fact that by separate notification the time limit for passing the order have been extended and therefore it would provide some additional time to the officer to issue the so cause notice. Board does not say so. This extension of passing the order is applicable to certain specific cases which have been issued in certain specific time frame. It is not a futile notification. I am not saying that. But this notification granting the extension of time for passing the order does not mean that the time limit for issuing the so cause notice also stands extended. That is my view. And then what happens? Section 7510, a very, very novel feature of the GST law. This I would must say, because it was never there. If an order is not passed within the time limit set under 7310 or 7410, the proceedings are deemed to be concluded. There are 2 time limits, 7310 and 7410. A very novel feature, deemed to be concluded. Entire proceedings end there. The proceeding becomes infructuous, notice becomes infructuous. If a so cause notice for 1718 is not issued before 5th November 22, it is time barred. And if the order is not passed before 31st December 2023, the proceedings itself become infructuous and invalid. They are deemed to be concluded. For 1819, same story follows. Please consider, reflect upon these grounds. These are substantial grounds These are certain issues on which, as a lawyer, as a professional, I would like to lose the case in the High Court or Supreme Court. Everybody has accepted. Order is extended, time limit is extended, so cause notice time limit is also extended. Answer does not seem to be, it's not so easy as one thinks. Coming to I'll come straight to certain aspects of the cause notice and adjudication. How do you deal with the cause notice? When a cause notice is done, 2-3 things should be kept in mind. DRC 01 is not a cause notice. DRC 01 is only a summary of the cause notice. Rule 142, Subrule 1, Subrule A says, along with the cause notice issued under section 673 or 74, there are other sections also cited in the clause B. A proper officer shall issue a notice in form, summary of the notice in form DRC 01. Shall. It has to come along with the cause notice, but DRC 01 is merely a summary of the notice. It cannot be a substitute for the cause notice. NKS, Telangana High Court. Godavari Commodities, Jharkhand High Court. There are 7 to 8 judgments. Godavari Commodities High Court was so much upset that enjoined upon the commissioner to teach their officers what is the difference between DRC 01 and cause notice. Unfortunately, most of the professionals also do not know. How does DRC 01? There are normally 3 documents which you might be getting along. Cause notice in the standard format, which merely reproduces the language of 73-74. If any tax is not paid or short paid or refund erroneously granted, complete. Right? If any, what is meant by if any? You are issuing a cause notice. Then, if you do not reply to that within 30 days or if you do not appear for the hearing as and when called for, the matter will be decided on the evidence on record. Then there is a table, due date for filing the reply, so and so, 30 days. Then, date of personal hearing, not applicable. The top part says, if you do not appear for personal hearing. The table says, not applicable. Venue of hearing, not applicable. Who is the adjudicating authority? Not available. All these notices have been quashed by the High Courts. You must take these grounds. And then DRC 01, same story. It's a cause notice, it's a summary of the notice, not a substitute. If the irrelevant, NKS, Telangana, if irrelevant portion of the notice which is reproduced in the paper is not struck off, the notice is invalid. It is an annexure to this DRC 01. DRC 01 is an annexure to the cause notice. A cause notice cannot be an annexure to the DRC 01. Second is merely, same for order, DRC 07 and DRC 06. You file your reply in DRC 06. The DRC 07 same. The most important part is that DRC 01, DRC 07, even ASMT 10, DRC 01A, these are the documents which are digitally uploaded on the portal. Almost all these documents, you will find them that they are unsigned, because they have no facility to sign them. They are uploaded on the portal. The annexure which comes, or the detailed order which comes along with granting that it's a valid order, that only will be digitally signed. But the notice which is issued in the standard format or the order which is issued in DRC 07 will be unsigned. SRK Enterprises, Kolkata High Court says unsigned order or unsigned cause notice is invalid. Section 169 allows them to issue it, upload it electronically, but if it is unsigned, they are invalid. You must take these grounds. There are series of judgment on this. Now, maybe Sri Srinivasa Enterprises, Andhra Pradesh High Court. I'll incorporate all this slide into mine. Then SRK Enterprises, AP High Court, I beg your pardon, and Marg ERP, Delhi High Court, latest judgments. Unsigned order or unsigned cause notice are invalid. Section 169, SRK discusses this very detailed. We may not have thought about this ever, but fine. And then finally, what should we look at? The date of issue of the notice, date of receipt of the notice, 30 days, don't worry about that. Gaming company 21,000 crore notice, 30 days. Your client 21,000 notice, he is 21,000 crore notice, 30 days. So you are at par with the gaming company, don't worry. So it's an administrative time limit. But reply to that before that. Don't be in a hurry or haste to file the reply within 30 days. Let there be a response given. Always ask for the hearing. Okay, irrespective, we shall file our reply in due course of time. However, no decision shall be taken without hearing. You can write that. Even otherwise, section 75 subsection 4, it very clearly says that if the hearing is asked for in the writing or where the adverse order is contemplated, hearing must be given. So even when the hearing is not actually asked for specifically by the party for whatever reason, for whatever lack of communication, proper officer is bound to give you the hearing before order is passed. This has been very clearly explained by the high courts. What is the meaning of word or? Hydra Air, Delhi High Court, and Morley Developers, Bombay High Court. Or means 75 for or an adverse order. So even if the taxpayer has not asked for the hearing, if the order is contemplated against the party, hearing has to be given. This is the sum and substance. The proviso says no more than 3 adjournment, section 75(5), no more than 3 adjournment. This is again the legacy from the excise service station custom. No more than 3 adjournment. That takes the color from the facts to facts case. We have a benefit of 7 and 8 hearings. However, in one letter, when there is a disposal pressure, if he gives you 3 hearings, come on 15, 22 or 29, it does not mean he has given you the 3 hearings. He may as well say come between 1st May to 31st May on any day. It does not mean he has given you 31 hearings. We have judgments of tribunal on this. All depends upon the case of the case. And then list of the relied upon documents. Particularly 74 so-called notice based upon the investigation, we'll have a relied upon document. Go through the relied upon document list whether they are provided or not. Before even jumping to the reply, if the relied upon documents are not given, first ask for the relied upon documents, whichever are not made available. If the document, truckload of material documents are taken away by the party, compare the Panchnama, the whatever document they have taken away with the relied upon documents, whatever are unrelied upon, not referred to in the so-called notice, it is your right to ask for the return of that original documents. Section 67, subsection 9 or 8 probably. Unrelied upon documents they cannot retain. Relied upon documents they will retain original, but return the, you can ask for the xerox or photocopies of it. It is their duty to ask for. Return of the statement and free translation. If the statements are recorded in a language other than one can understand, suppose South Indian or any language, Tamil, Telugu or which one cannot understand, you can ask for the free translation on English. You need not do the English. It is their right, it is their obligation to do the free translation provided in English. Authority issuing the notice, whether he has issued the authority has power to issue the notice or not. And then understand the basis of the demand. And then finally, which are the allegations, nature of allegations, basis of allegation, evidence, interpretation of the statutory provision. Ideally, when a so-called notice is issued and you are reading the so-called notice, one should start para-wise your comments, making your own notes. Whatever strikes you first when you are reading the notice, go on making the note. Don't analyze, don't think, don't reflect. Whatever comes to your mind, this is the point, I will actually look into this. And then start making your notes and then develop your defense. Computation of demand. These are all the aspects on which you can rely upon. Your defense can be based upon any of these grounds depending upon the facts of the case. Time limit, cross-examination, drafting of the reply, brief background of the case, narration of the relevant facts, chronology of the events, and then relevant facts, exhibits, all the relevant documents. Don't worry about that whether the documents are available with the department or not. If you are relying upon any document in your reply, that should go as an exhibit by default, always. Don't worry about that, he has that document, he will look into, he will never look into. As easily he is not going to look into your reply. This is all for the appellate authorities and high courts. So always exhibits them. It's very important. Paper book judgment. Don't try to rely upon too many judgments on the same point. And you can rely upon that judgment. It can be indexed and it can be part of the paper book along with the reply. And then finally, grounds of defense. It can be merits of the case. When you are challenging on the merit itself, then it can be limitation. Demand is time barred. Computation. The computation is wrong. And the finally challenge to the penal action and other action proposed. As I said, importance of the reply. Your reply will serve you right up to Supreme Court. Please keep it in mind. And finally, adjudication, only one point, and I'll just conclude that. representation before the HOD gathering, some do's and don'ts, show cause notice, do make a note of the date of issue, do make a note of the date of receipt, do place acknowledgement of the receipt notice by way of a letter if there is a gap particularly by that, and always see that the portal is regularly visited by your client or by you. Don't take this type of responsibility. My again sincere advice. I would normally advise my client, I have advised them to create a separate email ID only for the GST purpose. The client should have a separate email ID only for GST. Nothing comes there. At least the post will not be missed. And don't expect department to issue email every time some so-called notice or DRC 01 or order is issued. Email may come, email intimation may not come. So it's our duty to actually continuously visit the portal. Please see that any new document is issued or not. Because there are conflicting judgments whether the date of serving of the so-called notice or order on the portal is the date of receipt of the order or not. So don't get into that mess. We are dealing with the digital text. Okay. And then do ask for the return of the non-reply document. Reply to so-called notice. Do address each allegation. Do provide evidence. Do check the latest status of the judgment you are relying upon. Don't jump to every judgment. You never know. The judgment, Supreme Court might have taken a different view. High Court may have stayed the operation of the order. Do check which judgment you are relied upon, what is the current status as far as possible. Do provide copies of the judgment relied upon with the relevant para duly highlighted. Do provide index and do page numbering of the reply. Do provide legible or typed copy of each document. Never ever file illegible copy of any document. It is an insult. Never do that. And never address any communication to any officer at any stage of the proceeding by name. One should never write the name. It's always designation. Always. Officer comes and officer goes. Designation remains. So no correspondence by name. Do ensure that the authorization or wakalatnama is on record. During summons, there is a judgment, very interesting judgment. Authorized representative under section 116 cannot appear during summons if the party is asked for to appear. High Court has said this. When the during search and seizure, be very careful. Desist from that practice of accompanying the client. It's a different matter in direct tax. Indirect tax, you never know. If there is a charge regarding the non-genuine transaction, you don't know what adjustment your client might have undertaken. As a professional, you can be in a very embarrassing situation. Suppression of products and plantation. I never participate in search and seizure proceeding. I monitor everything from behind the curtain. Desist of making this practice, resist this practice of visiting the officer every now and then. आप जितना डिस्टेंस रखोगे आपके लिए एज अ प्रोफेशनल एंड आपके क्लाइंट के लिए अच्छा है. No more phone call. Don't allow them to threaten their client on the phone call. Ask your client not to switch off the phone, not to take the call. आप आ जाओ, ये करो, वो करो. No information should be given as per the verbal instruction. If it is important, then say that in reference to your telephonic instruction or the request made by you, we are furnishing this information. Audit के बाद, one point. Audit के बाद, please cite always one letter file on the record. What records you have given for which period for which have been verified and audited, whether not or not, but you have produced. Always give this, simply bring the acknowledgement. The officer may not acknowledge it. They will actually, hate it, this type of communication. But please do that. Future may, if there is any demand on the ground of suppression, you can always say that before the previous audit, all these records were submitted. And they have gone through this. Always take the acknowledgement. Make a note which records were actually produced by you for verification and audit. And then take the acknowledgement after audit is over. Do address each question put forward. Do speak slowly, softly, and clearly. No point in shouting from your roof of it, from your, Well, you should not be timid also. Polite, but firm. And do maintain decorum of the proceeding, even before the commissioner. Do maintain your cool. You sometimes may not be even understanding whether you are talking to the wall, brick wall or not. No change in the expression of the officer. You can't even make out whether you are making a negative impression on the officer. It happens. Okay. And then don't address any correspondence by the name. Don't seek adjournment on flimsy ground. Don't use harsh or abusive language in your correspondence or reply. Don't go by head notes of the judgment. Read the full judgment before relying upon it. Don't sound or be hysteric during the hearing. I have seen even court also. We become hysteric. We shout. Doesn't get you anywhere. Don't make irrelevant submissions or state irrelevant facts. Don't try to impress your client when you are arguing the case. You are not here to impress your client. And don't copy and paste. Copy and paste. Please be careful of this culture prevalent in the young. You should be more careful when you are doing the copy paste instead of when you are doing the original drafting. I have seen the blunders which are committed when somebody is copy paste. आगे भी यही ground था ना, copy paste कर दो. Please don't do that. Leave it to the officers. You don't do that. And finally, I'll just stop here some other time. Taken too much of time, friends. So these are the certain basic nuances of the litigation. There are litigation under GST, like any other indirect tax or direct tax, there's a lot of hue and colors. They will take color from the facts of each case. Every single case will have its own facts. Be very clear about the facts. Don't look for the judgments. Don't look for the board instructions for everything. Don't look for the advance authority ruling. Facts, please understand. Facts will decide the judgment to be followed. Judgments will not dictate the facts. And please read WIRC Act simultaneously. Interpret the submission, interpret the provision in your own way personally. Try to find out some synergy or synchronization between two different provisions, how they are connected. This should be continuous exercise. If you have not read the WIRC Act, there is no point in being a professional practicing in the tax matters. You must read the WIRC Act. When you are dealing with the case, which are the relevant provisions, first you read that provisions personally and then build up your defense. So these are, I don't know whether I have actually opened up the Pandora's box by today's deliberation. Pandora's box, we might be using that. Musibaton or Dabdo. There's an interesting story behind this Pandora's box. I'll just share it with you in 2-3 minutes and then I will close my chapter. Pandora's box is basically a Greek myth. And there were two brothers, Prometheus and Epimetheus, who were actually sent by Lord Zeus to distribute different traits to different animals of the world. Prometheus stand for the hind side and Epimetheus stand for the foresight. So both actually went on the job, started distributing different traits and qualities to different animals of the world. When it came to man, man was the supreme animal, so he needed something extraordinary. So Prometheus went to, he stole the fire and gave it to the man. Prometheus was captured, Zeus was angry, he was actually put in the prison, and for 12 years he suffered the torture. Till the time every day vulture would come, eat his actually liver, and again he would survive. So he went on. However, in spite of this, Zeus' anger, sense of vengeance was not satisfied. So he summoned all the deities and asked them to create a woman, that is Pandora. Pandora is woman's name. So Zeus actually selected woman for vent out his ire and for rape. And that's why it is said that with due respect to all of you, there is no personal offense meant here. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That proverb has its roots in this Pandora story. Gujarati માં કહું તો પછી છંછેડાયેલી વાગણ છંછેડાયેલી સ્ત્રી કરતા સારી. So the Pandora was sent to all the, again, Epimetheus. And Epimetheus, she was obviously supposed to be beautiful and all that. So he fell in love with him. His brother knew what was in Zeus' mind, but he did not hear, દિલ હે કે માનતા નહીં, હજારો વર્ષ પહેલા આ હાલ હતા બધા. So then they fell in love, they married each other. Pandora was carrying a box with her, and that box she never opened. At least that caution was actually, which his brother in prison had sent, that he followed very rigidly and never to open that box. Now Pandora was carrying the box. It was actually not supposed to be opened. She was admonished not to open ever. She was cautioned, so she had to open. So it is said that curiosity killed the cat. That proverb is also roots in this Pandora story. Because she is a woman. If she is asked not to do something, she had to do. So therefore, she opened the box, and from that box came out all sorts of miseries, and disease and epidemics and pandemics and all gripped the world. Till that time, world was living in an extremely blissful condition. Pandora was afraid when all these miseries and everything engulfed the entire planet. She was afraid. She immediately shut the box, and one thing remained inside. After an interminable torturing period which the mankind actually encountered because of Pandora's misadventure, Pandora again had a visit to that box. She opened that. The one thing which had remained inside came out fluttering, and that was hope, Asha. And that's why it is said that in miserable times, it is only the hope which keeps us keeping it alive. After today's deliberation on this torturous subject of GST and the litigation, if I have really made your life miserable more than it already was, I am sure hope will keep you kicking and alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening section. I may request CA Jagrat Shah to propose a vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It is my privilege for words of thanks on behalf of Anand branch of ICAI. We would heartily thanks to our esteemed speaker, learned advocate Shailesh, for valuable contribution in session for legal and practical nuisance of litigation under GST and making his session a resounding success. By conveying legal principle in an understandable manner, have made thought-provoking discussion and enhance our learning experience, and it is very fruitful to the participant of the session. We are also thanking you for sparing your valuable time for delivering of this session. I would also thank to all participants for actively engagement and passion hearing in session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request everyone to be seated as we will be beginning with the next session after the day's changeover. I request CA Ketan Samdani, chairperson of this technical session, to escort the dignitaries to the dais.